It is the Anfield Wrap. Neil Atkinson with John Gibbons, with Beth Lindop, and with Josh Williams after Liverpool have gone to Crystal Palace and won by 1-0. Away games aren't easy. We'll be getting onto that in a minute or two. But before then, it is now one of those little funny international breaks. And also within that as well, it's not very far away from half term. So there's stuff going on at Anfield in this international break. There's the Anfield Experience. It's run the goalkeeper special this Saturday with Bruce Grobbelaar and Chris Kirkland. It's a full day VIP experience. You get a tour of the ground, full tour it says here. Food, drinks, entertainment, and a Q&A hosted by Steve Hothersall. That is the high point.
I thought that'd be your favourite bit. I wrote this copy, so blame me if it's wrong.
No.
But yeah, I thought I'll get Steve Hothersall in. I'll get Neil down there.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're available and you get quality Hothersall time, I wouldn't mess about, to be honest with you.
By the way, you know Steve hosts one of the lounges.
Yeah.
I was at Anfield at about 1 o'clock recently. For
the 3 o'clocks.
No. It was the evening. So I was doing something at Anfield in the day, completely separate for the game. But they said, "Can you come up on the day?" So I was there filming something at 1 o'clock. The game was at 8. As we were leaving the car park, Hothersall's arriving 1:30, and I'm like, "You're early." He's like, "Yeah, I just like to check everything's all right, for the guests and all the drinks are sorted and stuff like this." And I was like, "Steve, I'm not sure that's your job." And he's like, "Yeah, but if it's all running well, I'll do my job better." So and I was like, "What a fellow, honestly."
What hosting that is?
What I know.
I rocked in here 10 minutes late.
Honestly, if there's a reason,
wasn't working.
there's a reason they haven't got me and you doing these things, and they have got Steve Hothersall.
Yeah.
Is that if I was interviewing Jan Molby, say at 6:30. I'll be having a pint in the Harvard at 6:15 with you.
And maybe Jan, to be fair.
Yeah, calling it prep.
Yeah.
Whereas he's there 2 o'clock, just checking everyone's all right, knows everyone's names.
Yep.
Just want it all to run smoothly, so all the guests have a great time.
Well, there you are. That full day there for the full day VIP.
He's there. Steve's there now.
Yeah, he's setting up now. He's got a tent on the centre circle. It's very sleeping.
Unbelievable.
But if you haven't got the full day to spare, unlike Steve, there is also a Legends Q&A with Mark Lawrence, which includes the stadium tour and the entrance to the new and improved museum. The museum's great, by the way. The Legends Q&A is run on the weekends throughout the year. Jimmy Casey and Callahan, Phil Thompson included in that over the next few weeks. If you want to know any about any of this, really, bookings.liverpoolfc.com/stadium tours to find all of that out. Would really recommend the museum, and I'll say again, half term is on the horizon as well for people. Something for them to get stuck into there all the way through. We will start. It's Crystal Palace versus Liverpool, Josh, and away games aren't easy. There's only one away game won this weekend. I'm going to be getting into this in a number of different ways. We talked about it on Trends as well last week, which was really good. Only one away game won this weekend in the Premier League. It was by Liverpool. Simultaneously, there's only been 5 in the last 3 game weeks, as they're called. 5 away games won in the last 3 game weeks. Away games aren't easy, but in that first hour, to be fair to Liverpool and then to criticise Liverpool, they actually weren't that far away from making it look easy against Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I think first half in particular, we were as perfect as you can really be, to be honest. Without the finishing part, maybe. I think obviously Jota takes one chance, but overall I think we create 4 big chances in the game and only score one of them, obviously. So I think that's why it eventually ends up spiraling a little bit the way it does, and it kind of gets into a bit of a position where their fans start to sense something might happen and they start pushing a little bit because they're still in the game somehow. But I think first hour, as you said, I think their first shot came in the 46th minute.
And then the next one comes the other side of the Jota header. Yeah. So they've had only one attempt up to the Jota header, and then they don't get themselves another one at that point. And I think that's worthy of an enormous amount of praise. The flip side is Liverpool's expected goals by 62 is 1.38, and they've had so much control. Do you think that should have been higher?
Possibly, but I think to a certain extent, when you're going away from home, you do sacrifice a little bit of your attack just to keep everything quiet, almost, especially at a place like Selhurst Park. I felt it was very, very Man City, to be honest, the way Liverpool played in the first half. It felt very the most Guardiola we've played so far this season. Just killing the game, non-contest, removing this idea of jeopardy from the game, and really just penning them in for the entire match, really. And that's easier said than done when you're facing the likes of Eze and players like that. Adam Wharton's a great player, very good passer of the ball and stuff. So I was really impressed with Liverpool first half. I think that's how you win away games. That's how you keep difficult crowds quiet and stuff like that. But it always comes back to it, don't it? If you don't take your chances, if you don't kill the game off, which Liverpool have been really good at doing so far this season, getting that 2-0 lead. If you don't do that, you will always be. You will come under the cost eventually, I think.
Well, let's start with that positive, Beth. The control and the dominance, it should be praised. It was everyone doing the job, everyone working in harmony. Liverpool looked just really, really coherent. All areas of the pitch. They'd made a couple of changes, made 3, which might have made you think, well, it might not quite work. There's a reason why the manager's run with them so far. But instead, for 60 minutes, it does, other than grabbing the second, it does verge on the perfect away performance.
It does, and it's as comfortable as I've seen Liverpool at Selhurst Park, really, barring that 7-0, which was behind closed doors, so it didn't really happen.
Doesn't count, no.
So, yeah, it sounds like such a cliche, it is always a difficult place to go. Liverpool always struggle there. And, the record there is brilliant, but when you watch the game, it doesn't feel like that, because quite often they're quite emotionally draining games that are often on a knife edge. So I thought the way Liverpool played in that first half was exceptional. Obviously, Alisson makes a good save right on the stroke of half time, but other than that, I agree with Josh. It was very much the sort of performance we've grown accustomed to seeing from Manchester City and Arsenal over the last couple of seasons, where they get a relatively early goal and then they're just happy stroking it around and sort of taking any sting out of the game. And of course then you go into the second half and you always know if Liverpool didn't get that second goal at the end would be difficult. Liverpool probably made it more difficult than it needed to be in terms of that Jota header. If he'd have taken that, it'd have been a completely different game. Even much later on when Jota's, I think was it a 3-on-2 and Jota's through, and it looks like a fairly, when you're sat on your sofa, it looks like a fairly simple pass through to Diaz, and that makes it 2-0, and all of a sudden the last few minutes are nice and straightforward. But no, I think for the most part it was a perfect away performance in that first half.
They smother the space and they minimise risk. It's skewed in our minds because of the disallowed goal. I think that Phil said something interesting about Match of the Day over the weekend. I think in general, football's still struggling a little bit with the VAR disallowed goals, John, a little bit more than just to sort of to understand what's happening with the flow of the game. I think the players are much more au fait with that than we are at this point, in that, Van Dijk's attitude to that is he's just well offside, so I'm not even and that's not in my head. It might be in yours watching it, but it's not in my head. It was always going to get ruled out. That what's the point? He's almost angrier with the linesman than he is anything else. But you do remember that, and it does. I kept noticing on the commentary as we were watching it together, the TNT commentary kept saying, but for that disallowed goal early on, and you're a bit like, but he was 2.5 yards offside. So you wouldn't say but for that, but for that mad foul or something like that, if you know what I mean. But that does stay in your mind. But you've got to say they smother the space brilliantly, and they do, and this is the point I'm driving at here. It doesn't feel like it because they disallowed goal to the same extent, but the extent to which they minimise risk and they reduce Palace to absolute crumbs is hard to put into words.
Yeah, like you say, I don't think that the disallowed goal is in their minds at all, because I think they think that they've done everything right there, and that's part of good defending as much as winning an interception or a back post header,
a last-ditch tackle.
Yeah, they see that as part of sort of what they do, and they can see he's gone. They sort of leave him be, and it's a nice finish, but who cares? Do you know what I mean? It sort of doesn't really matter, and so I think they feel comfortable. The only time I think defensively we look slightly mad is at the end when they've got the 3-on-1 situation, isn't it? I still can't figure out how that's happened at 1-0 in that stage of the game, but certainly first half they were in complete control. The shape has been good generally this season. I think one of the reasons why we've conceded so few goals with effectively the same defence as we've had not just last season but for a little while now is that shape-wise, they do look a little bit better, and also, we're not giving the ball away as much because they're a bit more calculated in taking risks with the ball, and that might mean that the chances created sort of a little bit lower, but they are still creating enough to win games, and I think the manager will probably feel that actually we can still be creating more with the way we are playing, with some slightly better decision making on occasion or execution on orders, or just sort of getting used to it a little bit more. It was notable to me. In fact, Craig messaged me about it. He didn't watch the game with us, But he said the Liverpool's goal. He said we saw that about 20 times in America when we get invited to the open training and stuff like that. And when we were there in Philadelphia, he was like, we saw that goal a lot. We saw it, and the way Chimikas plays the ball, the way Gakpo just knows instinctively where to put it without even sort of necessarily looking, and the run is the kind of things that they have been working on, and they'll sort of keep working on. And so, for Josh's Man City point, they score goals a lot where you go, oh yeah, they just get that one all the time. And I think that's sort of almost the next evolution, I think, of what this manager will want, really, is just that bit more clinical in attack. So you just get, when we're getting into these good positions, which we are, we're just a little bit more likely to create that high quality chance. But yeah, with the caveat as well of Palace are struggling a little bit at the moment, and I think that does sort of need to be remembered. Beth says there, I can't remember going to Palace and us being so comfortable. I think we need to say, well, I can't remember going to Palace and they were 18th either. And so they're normally a little bit more confident. I think they feel a bit sort of fragile a little bit at the moment.
They miss Anderson and Elise so much. Elise was bits and pieces for them because of his fitness, but was obviously exceptional. Anderson, to me, just looked like he got Gay on this side, so Gay can now play as well. He can progress the ball there. Anderson can go both ways. He can go 70 yards. He can scare the extent to which I just think they missed him into both his defending ability and his organisation, but also his range of passing. I thought was huge.
I think it's the feeling of momentum of a club as well. Yeah. Last year they felt like they had loads, and then what happens, and one of the sad things in a way of sort of modern football, if you like, is that a club has a little bit of a go, and then richer clubs just go yoink and sort of take two. They could have lost more, but in the end, that sort of fucks you as well, because the other lads who don't go are going, oh well, I want to. Where's my move? Do you know what I mean? And
why is this harder?
So yeah, so I don't think Gay is delighted to be at Crystal Palace, considering this isn't me sort of questions professionalism or anything. This is just sort of human nature. He's had a summer playing for England in the Euros. He's been linked sort of here, there, and everywhere with other clubs who are likely to be sort of finishing high. It doesn't happen, and it's a bit like, oh, this again. And you know what? Two of my mates have gone. And playing sort of whatever, moods around football clubs are really important, and just there, it just sort of doesn't feel like quite right at the moment. But Liverpool have to take advantage of that, and for 60 minutes they did.
There'll be exceptions, Josh. If you want to do the most Guardiola felt a bit like Arteta's Arsenal thing, the one thing that you would say is, even with the opportunities that we created and the idea of creating some more, on 62 they are 2 ahead. They've ended it as a contest, and then they just sort of go from there, because the thing about the last 30 is, watching it back, it's not as fraught as it felt, obviously, at the time. But there's a little bit of a thing where, yeah, but Eze's better than that. And the set piece delivery is good, not great. The set piece, what they're doing with the set pieces when they get them, it's not the best. It could be a little bit better. There could have been a mad penalty in there. I found penalty controversy to be insane yet again. But even allowing for that, maybe a referee does just have a moment where he gives one from nowhere. And my point being is that when the opportunity, the next phase of this is, it's great to put the game. The Guardiola line is put the ball in the fridge, to put the game in the fridge against Palace. That's great, but you've got to keep it there, and the way you keep it there is with the scoreboard, and that's something for Slot and his boys to be working on.
Yeah, well, we've only conceded 2 goals so far. At the time when I checked, the only team that had conceded fewer in the whole of Europe is Juventus. I'm not sure how they got on over the weekend, but when I checked, they hadn't actually conceded a goal yet. Other than that, Liverpool have got the best defence in terms of goals conceded in Europe, as I said, and facing marginally fewer shots, but crucially we're not facing like big ones and like that, like 1v1s and things. Palace got a few set piece opportunities, obviously, towards the end. Maybe that's a way in which they missed Anderson as well, by the way. Anderson was a threat from set pieces when he was playing. I think the replacement that they've got in Lacroix, I don't think he offers the same degree of threat, and Gay is not an aerial threat either, so I think Palace was just a bit easier to manage in that sense. I think maybe Liverpool could have conceded 1 or 2 more over the course of the season, but I think at the same time, I really do think that the clear-cut nature of the shots we've faced has really not been there. I said on a show a couple of days ago, Alisson was facing a 1v1 something like every half an hour last season for Liverpool. This season it's not happened. This season, if a player gets a shot, it's under pressure. It's with bodies between himself and the goal. It's just difficult for players, and then obviously if you do get the shot away, you've got Alisson in goal most of the time. So I'm really, really taken back, to be honest, by how quickly Liverpool have sorted this defence out. I think it was number one priority, and I think Slot's just tackled it immediately. And Liverpool now look, title winning level when it comes to the defence, like.
And Liverpool have faced only 3 shots of value, best than 0.25 expected goals. One's Xerxes when it's 3-0 up against Manchester United. One's 8-0. Can't remember what the third one is yet, but I'll work that out in a minute or two, and we'll go from there. But that does tell that bit of story. But, and I will do the but, Josh is right. The numbers back him up. The point backs him up. But you get an injury to a goalkeeper. You do end up in a situation where they are 3-on-1. It's only because they make a bit of a mess of it, I'd argue, Beth, that they don't end up with a better opportunity. It's still a decent enough opportunity for Eze with given his quality. You've got to get that buffer in games if we're going to be able to, especially away from home, if we are going to be able to see games out completely relaxed. Yeah,
definitely. And I think, if you look back at that Forest defeat, which Slot, I think, is still fuming about because he seems to bring it up in every single interview. But, Liverpool weren't good that day at all. They were poor all across the pitch. But, they still had the lion's share of possession, and there was a degree of patience from them to almost to a frustrating extent because you wanted a little bit more urgency. But I think Liverpool go into most games thinking, well, we'll get a chance and we'll get a chance and we'll be able to kill the game and whatever. And I think that was there to an extent on Saturday. I think they almost all thought, we'll get another one at some point, and then the longer it goes on, the more difficult it is. And I think credit to Liverpool for the way that they dealt with that last sort of 15, 20 minutes, as John said, barring that mad sort of moment where they're so open and as they should do better. I think when you think about the momentum really swung in Palace's favour with Alisson going off and Yaros coming on, and he makes a little bit of a mess of a punch when he first comes on, and you just sort of think, gosh, this is going to be a long 20 minutes. And I think actually Liverpool do really well. They probably see it out better than they saw out the Wolves game. But you do need more than one goal, against teams like Palace, who, yes, they're obviously not in a good place at the moment and they've lost some brilliant players. They're still dangerous, and, Alisson was still probably busier on Saturday than Slot would have liked. So, yeah, you need to start going, 2-0 up, 3-0 up, and all of a sudden it becomes a little bit easier to just sort of be patient and stroke it around. But as you've both said, winning away games this season is proving incredibly, incredibly difficult. And so the fact that Liverpool have managed to grind out that sort of win in difficult circumstances, having lost the goal. Yeah. I mean, was it last season or the season before? Liverpool's record on the road was really poor. I think it was the season before last, wasn't it, where they were really sort of struggling.
But even last year, they only win 9.
Yeah.
They win 9 and 19 last season.
So, when you think about, obviously, they've lost a game at home already this season, but if Liverpool can harness some of the sort of emotion at home that they've shown under Jurgen Klopp, obviously it's sort of a less emotional brand of football, I guess, under Slot, but if they can make Anfield as much of a fortress as possible for the rest of the season and maintain this form on the road, then there's no reason that they can't be challenging for the title.
They lose the keeper, John, and that's obviously a blow. The other thing that when you looked at the bench was, I thought that obviously McAllister, we now know he's gone off with a little bit of a growing problem. Elliott's not available. They just suddenly looked, to me, I thought, a midfield sub-light. He does Endo in the end, and I think Endo comes on and genuinely fulfills the brief at that point. Let's be quite clear. I'm seeing Liverpool. I'm part of.
It's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, we're seeing Liverpool home, and I'll do everything it takes to see Liverpool home. And I thought that aspect of it was great. But it did, for the first time, sort of looking at the way a game's gone. Again, it's not unreasonable to think a midfielder might tire or might develop a bit of a problem over the course of the game. And I thought that they did suddenly look just one light in there. And as I say, losing the goalkeeper and his body language around it, I thought was also a bit of a hammer blow from what was otherwise a pretty good day. Yeah,
on the goalkeeper, you just wonder whether it's just like one too many in his head. He's just gone, not again. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Massively.
Surely, I can't imagine it's that bad an injury. Do you know what I mean? It's a hamstring. I just think he's just a bit fed up with them. Like, he knows he knows he gets too many injuries, and everyone's sort of saying it, and he's aware of that, and he's like, I know I'm living it, do you know what I mean? And so I don't think it'll be like a particularly bad one. You sometimes see a player's reaction if you go, it must be really bad one. I think he's just a bit fed up, like a lot of us are really with it, do you know what I mean? And so, and he sort of wants to be there. he was probably quite looking forward to playing for Brazil the next couple of weeks, and sort of that's not happening as well. But he's probably not even thinking about what games are coming up at that moment. He's just thinking like, I can't believe this has happened again. This is annoying, and so it is frustrating. You know, we've said it before. You never really know when a goalkeeper get his injured muscle injuries as much as him. You know, and whether it's something that he's doing, the way he's kicking it, or what. But you feel like if it was a preparation thing, they'd have sorted it by now. So some players just get them more, and some players, you know, everyone's body's different and stuff like that. And I'm sure he's done loads in terms of strengthening and things like that. And it sort of happened. You know, luckily, I was going to say we've got a good number 2. The number 3 didn't look too bad either, to be fair to him. And you know, he's a confident boy, which really helps. And he's played some good level football.
He's played a cup final.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's worth pointing that out. He's played a cup final in Austria.
Which sort of helps as well. So I thought he did really well, but they're going to need him. But it just was frustrating. And Endo, I agree with you. I think he did really well. And I think if the manager's thinking now, well, that's one more I can use in certain situations, and then that's good. I think there was a show we did last week where someone, I can't remember who it was, said, you know, you get the feeling there's only maybe 14 he trusts, and I think that sort of felt a little bit right, really. I think if Endo's one more, not necessarily in every game or not even necessarily to start, but he can throw on in certain situations and would do a good job for him. I think if he's done that, then that'll sort of help with him. Listen, we are in midfield. I don't think it was just a weekend where we looked at. There's other times where, you know, we've only had one really on the bench, and you know, he ever sort of one injury away, but we were all staying in the summer, weren't we? And they tried to get one, and it didn't happen. I hope they still go out and get one in January, because I think, you know, it would be nice to be rotating a little bit more in that position than what we have, and we're going to have to, you know, after the next international break. But I thought Jones did okay without it being like a brilliant performance for him.
I thought he was really good for an hour, and then as the game began to get away from us, I thought it began to get away from him. But I thought for the hour, I thought in both roles he plays, I think he does a really good job. But I think that then either he tires, Liverpool just struggle to get him on it a little bit more, whichever way it went.
Yeah, I think he's always been a better player than when we're on top than sort of when we're not. I think that would be maybe a little bit of a criticism of him. He's never really one who's been like, oh, we were struggling, but Jones really grabbed the game for us and things like that. I think he's when the team given the platform to perform, I think he sort of shows his best, and so I think it was probably as much as a momentum as a game thing as it was. But you know, he's not started loads of games, I suppose, so there might have been a sort of fatigue thing. But he is an option for Liverpool. We will need him because there aren't sort of loads more. But I'd like to think with Endo that he's played himself into the manager's mind a little bit more, because for me, you know, there's no reason why he can't be starting certain games, and certainly can't be coming on when you need a bit of sort of surety either. You know, he is a good footballer, he was signed for a reason. He played well last season, and you know, whether he's a long-term plan or you know, for the manager, or he'd love to start to win a cup final, maybe not, but you know, not every player has to be that right now in this situation.
Absolutely. Jota, Beth, he scores the goal he should score. You can't argue with it. There it is, puts it home. He's there for it as well. He gets the opportunities as well to score the other goal he should score, but he doesn't score the other goal he should score. So he's grafting like nothing on earth, works all the way through the game, runs the channels again, another full 90 from him. I think he does a good job of stopping them playing. It's a funny one because Liverpool win 1-0 and Diogo Jota scored the winner. So that's what you want. That's the job. That's where it comes from. But I think he'll go away thinking, yeah, but I should have got 2. And I think that's worth remembering, that'll be the standard he holds himself to.
Yeah, absolutely, and he probably scores the slightly more difficult chance than you know, the header. It looked like an absolute banker, didn't it? When you saw him, he timed his run to perfection. It was a great ball in, and he looked frustrated with himself, and he puts that wide. And if that goes in, it is a completely different game, a completely different end to the game. I think, you know, he is Liverpool's most clinical finisher. That's sort of the general consensus now, but that doesn't mean that he's going to score every single chance, and, you know, he should have done better, and that's something that, you know, I'm sure Slot will have said to him, and, you know, over the course of the season, maybe that, you know, as much as the others maybe need to up that clinical edge, hopefully Jota can as well, and his output increases, because there's no reason why Jota can't be scoring 20 plus goals a season for Liverpool with the chances that he gets and he makes for himself. I do wonder if we hadn't had that Alisson sub, whether Núñez would have made an appearance, and again that might have changed the dynamic of things a little bit later on. I think when Alisson goes off, it's very much more of a, okay, we're almost going to settle for the 1-0.
Backs the wall now, but we'll accept it. Yeah,
and I think that probably alters the manager's game plan a little bit. I think maybe if it wasn't for that, we would have had Núñez on. We would have seen Liverpool push for a second goal more than perhaps they did. But yeah, I think Jota, I mean, when you look at his start to the season, and not just his output, but in terms of, as you say, just sort of his ability to make life really difficult for defenders and be a real nuisance as he was at Wolves. He's such an asset, and keeping him fit is paramount.
Just on Jota, on the chances, the one he misses with the side foot, I think is... It looks worse because of how badly he misses it, I think. And so I think, it comes to him and he just... In fact, I don't even think it goes out.
No, it goes for a throw.
No, it doesn't, no.
Yeah, but it goes that way. But I think they actually sort of catch it up. And so I don't even actually think it sort of ends up going out of place. So it's such a bad miss. You're like, it's a bit like the famous Keita one in the final, because you miss it that much. It's like, it's awful. But when you actually see it from behind the goal, there's not actually that much of the goal he can hit. And so we don't... It's probably going to get blocked. There's a defender covering half the goal when Jota hits it, and then the keeper's sort of on the other half. So, although it's obviously not a great finish at all, I think if he had got hold of it, the chances are it either hits the defender or the keeper saves it, I think. And so I think, although it looks bad, I think... They said if he'd have hit it and it hit the defender, we'd have said, oh, unlucky, but it still doesn't go in. Do you know what I mean? The result is sort of still the same, really.
I think he deserves a ton of credit for the first one as well, the one he actually scores. When Gakpo was kind of about to receive the ball, Jota's nowhere near where Gakpo would want him. And he does go on like quite a quick spree. He reads it really quickly and gets to where he needs to be and gets there ahead of... I'm not sure if it's Gray or...
I thought it was
Chalobah.
Chalobah, yeah. Well, he reads it really well anyway and makes that sprint, gets across near post and puts it away. But that run that he makes to get into that spot, I don't think you can underestimate that.
Because I think how many of Liverpool's players make that run regularly.
Yeah,
I think he's the one, isn't he? I think all of Liverpool's forwards offer something different, but he's the one who, in that position, you want there and you imagine being there.
Yeah, they're the kind of ones, I was going to say, then you can't really coach them. I suppose you can coach them, but some players just, they're a bit instinctual with that sort of thing. Just, I know where it needs to be, I know what's transpiring here, and it goes back to that poacher elements of Jota's game, I think.
Just in general, though, it was interesting that he ends up with those 3 chances, Josh, in the context of the manager saying on Friday in his press conference pre-match, we need to be creating more chances for the centre forwards, full stop. He was referring to Núñez, but he also pulled himself. Someone was asking about Núñez, but he pulled Jota into the conversation as well and said we haven't had enough so far this season for our centre forwards. Then suddenly next game, bang, there's 3 good ones for the fella who's playing number 9, and I think there's a little bit of a thing where it is something that they'll have been conscious of and working on, wanting to get the centre forwards into the game a bit more, and there we go, they managed to do it there against Palace.
Yeah, well, we're not creating that much in terms of quantity compared to last season, at least. As I said on the midweek extra, was it last week, that we, in our past 2 games, we've only created 9 shots. That's not a lot for Liverpool's team. In this game, we created 16, so much better. But I think Slott's spot on really when he says, like, if you want to put these especially Núñez in chances to score goals, which is kind of, I was going to say it's all Núñez offers, but it kind of is, really. I mean, I think Jota's got a bit more of an all-round game, but I think Núñez, if you're going to have him on a pitch, you need to be creating chances for him. So I think Liverpool need to get that balance right of not giving away anything at one end and creating enough at the other end to be worthy of winning the game. And I think maybe we're still searching for that balance a little bit.
Beth, the key thing to point out, though, is Liverpool clinical in one box, excellent in the other. Obviously goalkeeper thing in there, but both goalkeepers who play the game I think have good games.
Van Dijk, by the way.
Well, I was about to say the centre halves are just outrageous again, especially Van Dijk. Van Dijk's he's exceptional, Beth. He makes playing central defence at the highest level of English football just look really easy. But I almost don't like saying that because it feels as though you're patronising something somewhere in amongst it instead of just acknowledging that what you're seeing is a genuine great of the game every single week, and it's a joy and a pleasure to watch him. Yeah,
he's totally imperious, isn't he? And I think he probably could have been in with a shout for man of the match in every single game that Liverpool have played, and I think he's almost a victim of his own success in the sense of, even within the fan base, but certainly more broadly, we hear a lot at the moment about Saliba and Gabriel, both who have been brilliant, have formed an excellent partnership and deserve enormous credit for that, but Van Dijk is, in my opinion, a level above what they are doing and what they have been doing. I think he's just so good. And I think it's because he makes everything look so easy that you sort of underestimate how difficult it is. I think it was in the Bologna game, he went to ground at one point, and a few people around me were like, God, that's the first time I've seen him go to ground in ages, because he just doesn't do it, and he doesn't need to, because he reads everything so well, and he sweeps up so well. And I think the balance that he has with Konate at the moment is brilliant, because Konate is that player who will dive in, sometimes a little bit recklessly, but for the most part this season he's been exceptional at reading, when he needs to go and cover for Trent, for example, when he needs to make a little bit of a more robust challenge. And Van Dijk's the one who's just mopping it up, and I think they've got a really great balance between the two of them. I think from set pieces now, they're both a massive threat. Van Dijk has a half chance, doesn't he, in the first half on Saturday as well. But it just sort of feels like at times last season, it felt like Liverpool weren't taking pride in the defending as much. And Van Dijk, to be fair, had a great season last season as well. But I just feel like now as a defensive unit, Liverpool really are taking pride in the defending, and I think that's what set Arsenal apart from Liverpool over the past couple of years. That back line have really prided themselves on giving away very little, and I think Liverpool are doing that this season.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point by Beth, and I think it is something that there seems to be there more, this idea of we're on the pitch and we're keeping a clean sheet now is there. So I just wanted to touch on that, because I think that's a really important point. But what I did want to say about Van Dijk was, I think his passing into midfield this season has been phenomenal, and I think the makeup of our midfield and what we're asking for from the defenders, I think has really helped him. And it frustrated me in the past a little bit, where you get midfielders come and take the ball off the defenders, and I always felt there was no need to do it when you've got the defenders who can play like we have. And I think if you could just get up the pitch and you can open up the whole sort of game there, by having a midfielder, come sort of taking it off the defender, then you're giving yourself one less option sort of further forward. I think they're really trusting, the manager especially is really trusting those defenders on the ball, and he's telling the midfielders to do it. And these punches into Gravenberch and Gravenberch turns it away have just become a real feature of our sort of build-up play. And listen, we've always known that Virgil can pass the ball, but you associate it with the big long passes, don't you? And listen, we're still getting them from both him and Konate, but I'm just really liking these short, sharp, punches into midfield that both of them are showing. But I think especially Virgil and Gravenberch have just got on this really nice wavelength with each other, where Gravenberch's like, just give it to me anywhere, anyone on me, don't worry about it.
I think the way Virgil does it into him, John actually says to Gravenberch, this is what I want you to do next. Like Virgil's passing it in a way that says to Gravenberch,
the midfielder's that side, you're going to turn that side. Yeah.
That he's almost playing it with information on it, saying to Gravenberch, if I put it here, you just
don't
trust
even
me.
have to look where it is.
Just trust me.
Yeah.
You just trust me. If I put it there, you just trust me and go.
Yeah,
and I think
that way.
And I think that's what's happening there. I think that's what you're seeing, and that is exceptionally impressive. And it's trust between everybody.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's just helping us so much get up the pitch.
I am slightly concerned though for Virgil that he got home on Saturday night and Darren Fletcher was camped outside his house going, you should have given a penalty away there. I have never heard someone 30 minutes after the event still going on.
It was an absolute non-event as well.
It was just like, it was one of those they get given sometimes. If they get given,
I'm not even sure they do, to be honest with you.
It would have been very soft.
But it
was like the most.
If you watch it full speed, you're like, hang on, what? Show me it again.
It was as if he'd
what are you even moaning about?
decapitated him or something, by the way that I've never honestly heard anything like it.
Martin Samuel, whose son reportedly worked for the City Football Group, has written about it in the Times today.
Has he?
Yeah, like genuinely like it's a scandal.
Oh, wow.
And Andy Burnham, the mayor of Manchester, retweeted a Crystal Palace thing that said, a VAR thing that said, decision, look at the importance of the club crest. This is what madness you can now get online from people as respectable as Martin Samuel, whose son reputedly worked for the City Football Group, and the mayor of Manchester. Because these are serious men who should be taken seriously at all times, and they most definitely think they should be taken seriously at all times as well.
I think Andy Burnham's replaced this wallpaper at home with just loads of them corrupt pictures, A4s, just plastered.
I hope his partner's insisted he can have that in one room and one room only. Put that in your office.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do that, that's the way in which it works. We mentioned Gravenberch there yet again. Josh, shining light. he's coming up against good players who, by the way, people would have been quite happy, certainly in Morton's case, to see Liverpool go for, and that's not to say that Liverpool shouldn't off the back of one game or anything like that, but it's the sheer certainty with which Gravenberch goes about his business, and to the point about Liverpool's first hour, I think Liverpool had a real plan as to how they were going to dominate Crystal Palace in the middle of the park, and he was integral to it.
Yeah, when he's at his best, he just glides, doesn't he? He just, it's so easy for him. He's so smooth on the ball, so elegant in the way he carries it, and I think his passing decisions are a lot more sensible this season. I think he's keeping the ball more and stuff. But in a fair few games this season, like certain halves and things like that, Liverpool have gone to a 4-3-3 at times, and they've left Gravenberch alone, Leslie alone 6, and a lot of people would have initially said, well, the reason it's working is because he's got a partner next to him, because he's got McAllister holding his hand and stuff like that. But as I said, in some of these games, he's on his own like Fabinho was, and he's still just, looks like he's coasting through games, really, and I mean that as a compliment.
It's in part how they play. They play that 5-2-3, at least that's the way they started the game. So you've got this idea, I think, that if our two go right onto their two and say, well, you've got to worry about us, it creates a bit of room for Gravenberch, and now suddenly he's dealing with either lads who are coming in from wide or on Saturday to start with, at least, Nketiah leading the line, and he's got to worry about Gravenberch. So he's not directly all the time playing against midfielders, but that shows how Liverpool can flex and change it. And it's a funny thing, it's the first time we've seen the manager come up against a back five. It's also the first time he's come up against this sort of 5-2-3, like I'm saying. And I just thought that was part of how Liverpool knew they could just step all over it, because they knew whoever it was that they wanted to turn the battle into Palace, and I think they did choose Gravenberch, the Liverpool player would win the battle.
Yeah, well, I've literally done a piece on that today. It's going to go up as soon as I get home, to be honest. But it's on that 5-2-3 that Palace ended up using. Obviously, it's 3-4-3 on paper. That sounds a lot better. But if you're doing a 5-2-3, that midfield two got a lot of space to cover side to side.
The Munoz injury helps us.
Yeah. But we play a lot of switches of play as well, by the way. And that's just asking Wharton and Lerma to just run. Make them run more and more side to side. McAllister was picking up the ball as joining forces with Tsimikas and Gakpo was a 3. It was just overloading that side, and Palace didn't have the men to cope with that. And so I think structurally Liverpool just kind of broke them down, and that fostered the dominance that we ended up with in the first half. It's
also why Jota's so important as well, because he almost manages to occupy 3 at times with his running, with his movement, with his cleverness. I think that it's worth sort of saying that this, Liverpool don't do all this stuff by accident. You've got a lot of people who are having to position themselves really smartly and then also graft. And I thought there was a couple of times, certainly as the first half was wearing on, it was just like what Jota closes him. Next one, move the ball, Jota closes him. The ball goes again, Jota closes him, and that let Liverpool get the shape.
Yeah, well, I was worried about Jota getting sent off, to be honest, because I think he gets a yellow card, something like 25, half an hour in or something like that, and he's still harrying him like a dog for the next hour. And I was thinking to myself, be careful, this is accumulating this, but it just, the amount of graft that he puts in for the shirt, and Slot praised him after the game as well and said he's just tactically really intelligent. He's doing his coaching badges and that already and stuff, and Slot just said he just knows when to drop, when to run in behind, which passing lane to cover and things like that. Just a really smart player and very efficient in the way he goes about his work usually.
What all this turns into, Beth, is the start. I want to come on and talk about the contract in a minute or two, but it turns into the start as a whole. They've won 9 out of 10 in all comps. You said before the manager's not letting that Nottingham Forest game go. If it was, he'd have won 10 out of 10. And there'd be a lot more noise around it. But I'd rather have the 3 points in the noise than not have the 3 points, Beth, to be crystal clear. But it is easy to say, but also truthful to say, it just could not be much better. The best thing is the manager just seems really clear-eyed on the challenge. He's the most clear-eyed on the challenge. And we're getting to almost see, I think, when he first came in, he was very focused. And then from there, we've been able to see the sheer clarity with which he's looking at what it is he needs this team to do. How you win a league title in this country. A lot of it seems obvious things to say, but a lot of managers don't say them, and he just says them.
He does, and I think that in a way is what has impressed me most. I think some of the football that he's got Liverpool playing is exceptional, and the manner in which he's seemed to have tightened up the defence, which was such a problem at times last season, and how quickly he's done that is really impressive. But it's off the pitch that I've been most impressed by him. I've been down to a couple of his press conferences over the last couple of months, and I went down to his pre-Bologna one last week at Anfield, and it was the most of his personality that I think I've seen come out, and I just sort of there was just something about him. We've all been lucky enough to be in the presence of Jurgen, and I think when you were in his presence, you very much felt an aura, and his charisma was so unavoidable. And I think Slot is a very different kind of character, and I think he's a lot more understated, but that doesn't mean he's unimpressive. I think he's so, in the same way that Jurgen was, he's such a good speaker. His way of articulating things is really, really impressive. And I think now, even over the last few weeks, I think you've seen him relax into those things off the pitch in his interviews and things like that a little bit more, and you can see that personality coming out. So I think he's been tremendous. I really do. I think he's fully aware that there are tougher challenges ahead. I think someone tweeted, didn't they, that at the weekend, like what people won't tell you is Liverpool have had this great start, but they've only played, X, Y, and Z, and everyone was like, hang on a minute, Slot's been the first person saying
every opportunity.
Yeah. Like
he might take an ad out in the paper.
Yeah, every opportunity to put the boot into Manchester United when he's saying we've not played anyone good, he's taken it. And I thought it was quite good what he said after the game on Saturday when he got asked about this tough run of fixtures. And listen, it's an incredibly tough run of fixtures that Liverpool have after the international break. But he said, but I know now how tough Wolves away is. I know how tough Palace away is, and you can't argue with that. And I actually think that there's a world where some of these fixtures against the so-called tougher opposition, Liverpool maybe win those games more convincingly because of the way that the two teams play.
And also they're at home, a fair few of them as well.
Yeah, so there are far tougher challenges to come. I suppose the only real test of his character will come when Liverpool have a sustained spell where they may be, under the cosh a little bit. But so far, so good.
It is the funny thing on, I started off saying only one team's won away, only 5 from the last 3 game weeks. You can say the next run of fixtures looks hard, John, but 3 of them are at home.
Yeah.
Chelsea, Brighton and Aston Villa, they're all coming to Anfield. Aston Villa at the end of another long run. It's 3 away games in a week for Villa. They go away to Tottenham on the Sunday, they go away to Bruges on the Wednesday, and then they're away to Liverpool on the Saturday night. And listen, Bruges might prove itself to be quite straightforward, but you've still got to go, you've still got to do the fixture, you've still got to go through it all, and you've got to do the travel. With it, I think it is right to say we haven't played a good side yet, other than possibly Milan. I think it is right to say we haven't played a good side yet. But the flip side of it is, in comparison, what I watched over the weekend when I watched a lot of football, I think there's a lot of really, really good players in this league, but there's a lot of cancelling each other out. And I'll say it again, everyone's struggling away from home.
Yeah, so who's to say that the Chelsea at home, for example, won't feel like an easy game once we're in it than Wolves away did, which sounds crazy because Wolves are bottom, but Wolves have had the opposite start to us. At one point, the best team we played was Forest. The worst team they've played, the league will tell you, is Forest. They've had the complete flip to us, Wolves so far. So a bit later in the season when they're in a better position, which I think they will be, because it sounds like they're all behind the manager. I loved Lamina coming out for him, to bat for him. It's brilliant, the quotes. It's real Father Ted stuff, if you can sort of dig it out. But coming out for the coach, but that's great. It shows they're behind him. I think Wolves will be fine, and I think later in the season where they do take points off a few people, probably Man City, because that's what they do. It'll sort of look a bit of a better one, and like you say, at home, Neil, against some of these teams, the actual games themselves might end up being a little bit more straightforward, in terms of how they sort of go, and certainly the last sort of 10, 15 minutes than some of these, away games against tougher side. Listen, if you're not playing well, every game looks hard, doesn't it? We've had periods where, Liverpool was struggling. You could talk yourself into any game being a banana skin, or any game sort of, being tough. Liverpool aren't playing brilliantly at the moment, but they're getting results, and they're playing good stuff, and they're looking tough to beat and tough to create chances against, like Josh says, and just like we're going to be on top in more games than sort of what they're not. So for me, I'm not worried about any of these fixtures coming up individually. I think the run is the concerning thing, because I think
you get mass injuries, you get fatigue, there's a lot of stressful games.
Exactly. So individually, there's no one who concerns me about anyone who we could play. Bring them all on. Your international army. But I think as a collective, I think is where the strain is going to be, and where we're going to need everyone, and we're going to need a few more minutes from a few more lads than what we've been showing. But on a one-off basis, I think we can beat anyone at the moment because, like you say, Neil, you watch the others and you think, well yeah, we're top of the league for a reason.
Yeah, there's the obvious toughest game in the run is by a mile Arsenal away. It'll be the second hardest, maybe even joint hardest game Liverpool play all season. There's a reason why, because there's 3 teams, Josh, and I think it's interesting watching the table break this weekend. There's quite clearly 3 teams. Then there's a break. Then there's the sides who are looking to come fourth or maybe fifth if it goes a certain way and get to the Champions League places. Then there's a break. Then there's the sides that currently sit in mid-table, the bottom of which is Manchester United, and then there's a break, and then there's the 6 teams.
Yeah, the 11th by any chance?
No, the 15th.
Oh, are you nice?
14th or 15th.
Yeah, they've snuck up to 14th.
Yeah, they've got themselves to 14th. So, and then there's 15th down, there's 6 teams who you think are likely to end up in a relegation scrap. The point being is to return to a theme that we've touched on the trends that I touch on everywhere I go. There are 3 really, really good teams, and the table already, it's only 7 games gone. The table's showing you that. And that game against Arsenal, it will be absolutely massive. It really will. But what I quite like about it is Liverpool are in a position where it could well just be that a draw is undoubtedly a good result.
Yeah, you've only got to look at the players. I think the players for those 3 teams are at a level above, the players that represent the other teams. I think Chelsea are building a good squad, to be fair to them, but they do have 1 million players and they have just appointed a new manager, so they're a little bit messier in comparison to the 3 that we're on about. But I do think they're the strongest by a mile. I think it was always a 3-horse race in my head. I just wanted to see a bit of a confirmation that Liverpool would get off to a good start, and we have. And I think the Forest thing as well, by the way, I think it's worth pointing out, Forest have since gone away to Brighton and Chelsea and avoided defeat.
Yep.
So I think they're the kind of team this season that might pick up a few scalps, their first of which was just Liverpool. But I think if we'd have had that result in 3 months' time, by then it might be a bit of a narrative that Forest Nuno's always been that manager. He's always caused problems for dominant sides who want to dominate the ball and things like that. So, that's the only scalp we've suffered from so far.
You just need to tell Arne Slot.
Yeah, I know. That's the only scalp we've suffered from so far. And going back to Slot, what you just mentioned there, I think he's been absolutely spot on. Honestly, I think he has hit it out the park so far. Klopp was brilliant, and Klopp was a winner and everything, obviously. But I think Klopp had this thing about him where I think at heart Klopp was an underdog. And I think he always liked the idea of competing against the giant with a bit more wealth or a bit more of a stronger foundation, like a Bayern Munich or a Manchester City with Pep Guardiola in charge and things like that. And he was a master at being that underdog. Like, I remember Tuchel coming out before, I think it might have been a cup final, and saying like, Jurgen's just so good at this, just becoming an underdog, when in reality he's got the best goalkeeper in the world, the best centre-half in the world, Mo Salah up front. He's got all these... But Slots came in, and it's been a bit of a different way of approaching it, I think, with like his press conferences and things like the other day when he just kind of outright said, well, we're Liverpool. Like, what do you mean? Like, we're top of the league. With this, we're used to this. He's going into every game expecting to win. If Liverpool win, but the performance isn't perfect, he'll reference it and say like, well, he weren't good enough, and he keeps mentioning Forest as like... I mean, we literally won every game apart from that one, but it's killing them. It's proper bothering them. So I think he's just challenged the group, I think, a little bit in the sense of like, we are now here to win, basically. I think a lot of people have referenced the Shankly to Paisley thing, and I'm obviously too young to know what the exact dynamics of that, but at the same time, I feel like I get what people mean when they say that. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, very much so. The thing on the horizon, though, John, the thing that the club's still got to address is the contract situation. News breaking that they're looking at doing a new deal for Quansah, which you wouldn't have thought to be particularly complicated. And Konate, who is out of contract in the summer of 2026, they're talking to him. But within that coverage, there's a couple of lines. Paul Joyce uses the word impasse on the 3 that are out of contract next summer. It does feel as though Liverpool need there to not be an impasse. I would argue on at the very least 2 of the 3. I think that there are more things in play than the obvious. I think it's worth saying Liverpool's football costs to turnover last year were 67%. That's not been sort of talked about yet because people don't want to talk about the new rules because rules are boring and it's UEFA and it's complicated, and I've got a lot of sympathy for that. But it does mean that Liverpool haven't got a ton of wiggle room. That's according to Swiss Ramble, if I remember rightly, in a couple of aspects of all of this. But Liverpool have got 3 terrific players who are contributing right now, And the one thing that we do not need, that Slot doesn't need, that this club doesn't need, is just another extended goodbye. I think it would not be conducive to what we all want this season.
Yeah, 100%. I think you want the players to stay because they're great footballers, but also I think this season is a real opportunity and we just don't want the distraction. And I just think once you get near to January, I think it starts being one. You know, I really felt for the lad at Real Madrid. He got that bad injury, but mostly I felt for me. Because I was like, fucking hell, this is another thing that's going to make this like a bigger story. Obviously, they can all sign pre-contracts with anyone outside the UK, and I don't think any of us are really expecting them to sign for another English club if they do leave. And so basically from January the 1st, you know, it becomes an open market for anyone to approach them. I'm sure they have already, this story that's coming out to saying, Real Madrid haven't said anything yet. It's bollocks, do you know what I mean? It's just like they're not allowed. So they tell Fab Romano to say this, and he does. And so it's there will be conversations happening, but obviously that sort of gets ratcheted up, and you'd only ever, half 10 tweets away from it just being announced that or the morning, opening the morning's papers and there you are, it's sort of all done. And that's a big thing to be hanging over the squad, when I think we are going for the title, and I think we've all been in agreement in sort of that room, really. And so, listen, there's a chance if they all do decide to go, then it's the big, let's go out on a high and win everything and stuff like that. Like, that is possible, but I think it's sort of just more likely it becomes a sort of, a bit of a thing the other way. The manager's getting asked about it a lot at the moment. It's going to get even worse. I think the other side of
Virgil's last game against Man City, Trent's last game against Man City, Salah's last game against Man City, all that stuff.
If it's announced they go, then that becomes a thing. But even if it's not, I think so. Listen, I'm pleased that they're being proactive with the other two. I think I've seen some people sort of moan about it. What are the other ones? They've got themselves in a bit of a mess, and so if they're learning from that, if you like. It's part of the thing where, you can see the problems when Edwards left the first time and they never really sorted it. Obviously, Julian Ward comes in for a while, and then sort of he goes, and then Schmacker's doing half the job for Ibiza, and it's kind of just.
And also the manager's going. It's worth saying. And what's the new fella going to be?
But then they give the manager more power, and then he obviously announced he was going, and I think. It just shows how quickly you can turn from a really well-run football club, and this club was that, no matter what people want to say, to sort of a bit of a mess. And then now, if hopefully we're back sort of where we were in terms of structures, but they've got these problems that have caused from the fact that for a while it wasn't. And so I think it is a good thing that they're trying to sort Canate and Quinter. I don't think it's, and presumably others, I think there's been Diaz chat as well. I don't think it's necessarily, it's not like it's not like Salah's agent's going to ring the club and we're engaged because we're trying to sort something else. He's going to go, fuck it, then we're going to Saudi. Like there's enough people at this club now. They hired about 8 in the summer for them to sort, all this out, but. So it's good that they're trying to sort this ongoing thing, but he has. I do feel a little bit for Richard Hughes in a way because he's inherited this problem, but it is a massive problem, and it's only getting a bigger problem, and it just needs sorting. That's just obvious, but it just needs sorting.
One of the things that happens as well is you play football matches. We've just sat here and waxed lyrical and spent the season waxing lyrical about Van Dijk. Put the other two to one side for a second. You can have a different conversation about in a couple of ways. Salah to me feels like he's in the midst of a bit of an inconsistent season, but when he's on, looks incredible. Trent is a remarkable footballer in so many ways, but at the minute, Virgil van Dijk just looks like the best player in his position in the country and could be the best one ever to play that position in the world, and doesn't look, unless there's information we don't have, as though he's going anywhere. In a way, I suspect Richard Hughes could sort of do without that a tiny little bit if he's trying to say, I don't want to sign you for 3 years, we'll do it, but I only want to do it year by year. And Virgil's agent is able to say, have you just seen what he did there against Crystal Palace? I think that this is, I'm saying that is a complexity in amongst it, but it's a complexity Liverpool needs to deal with, and in a way it's a good problem because have you just seen what he's just done against Crystal Palace? Yeah,
I think for all three of them, I'm sure the club will be trying to get the best deal for themselves in terms of length of contract and salaries, and whether that salary sort of depreciates over a certain amount of time and that sort of thing. And the club have, in a sense, you can say the right to do that. That's their prerogative. But I also think, they have to factor in if we do let these players go, then how much are we going to have to fork out to get someone who can come in and do what they do? And the answer to that question is a hell of a lot of money. And even then, the level might still be a real level below what these three lads are able to produce. So I think in a way, for me, from the outside looking in, I think Trent, I think Salah and Van Dijk looks like, I think both of those want to stay. And I think it will be, if they're at an impasse, I think it will be because the club are trying to hammer out, contract lengths that are maybe a year or two. There's a disparity there between what the player wants and what they want. Might be finances as well. And in that case, I think the club have to maybe relax sort of some of those harsh rules that they've had in terms of giving older players certain contract lengths, because I think both of those players have more than enough credit in the bank to and how they're playing at the minute suggests that they're still at the very top of the game. I think Trent is the difficult one, and the longer it goes on, the more I'm convinced he's going to go. And I think the hard thing is, until that gets sorted, the narrative is going to be about him and Real Madrid. If he plays well, the manager will get asked, well, you can't lose him, can you? If he doesn't play well, it'll be, this contract thing's hanging over his head. So it's a really, really difficult one. I don't envy Richard Hughes at all.
The other part of this, Josh, is I think that another thing that we need to be aware of is they're not three distinct contracts. Like, I think they interrelate to each other. And what I mean by that is, I think that, for instance, if you're concerned about length of contract for Salah, but you're less concerned for Van Dijk or vice versa, well, when Salah sees what Van Dijk gets and Van Dijk sees what Salah gets, that's a thing, or they might want to know what the answer is to that. At the minute, Salah is the highest earner at the club. It may well be that Trent Alexander-Arnold would quite like to be the highest earner at the club, but it might well be that Salah would also quite like some more money, at which point then, well, where does that go? It may well be that Trent Alexander-Arnold might be more open to the idea of staying at Liverpool and signing a mega bucks contract if he's the Liverpool captain. It may well be that Liverpool are of the view, we'd rather give you that contract if you're going to be captain, and go from there. But then the flip side of that is, we just talked about Van Dijk. My thing on this is why I think this has become a particularly knotty problem for Liverpool is the fact that it is all three. I don't think this is just one question or answer. I think that the agents will be wanting to know what's happening with the other ones down to the most detail they can possibly get out of Liverpool on it. And I think that just also makes it harder for them. But then these people are in this job to do this job.
Yeah, it's really tricky. I think Van Dijk and Salah in particular are very related. I think, whatever one gets, the other would be well within his rights to say, well, I want that as well. Just because of the both.
In terms of length of contract.
In terms of wage and everything as well, like Van Dijk.
Well, Van Dijk's already a good step below Salah, it's worth saying.
Yeah, he is.
And has accepted that in the past.
Yeah. When did Van Dijk last sign his contract, though?
It was prior to Salah's last one, but Van Dijk comes out immediately as soon as Salah does sign his last one. Is like fucking delighted. This is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. I don't know. It's difficult to determine what Virgil might want, but it just, he is the best centre-back I've ever seen. I think he's the best centre-back at Liverpool without question. I think he's still the best centre-back in the league. I think he'd be within his rights to ask for a rise, to be honest. I mean, it just depends on his agent and all that and how reasonable they are and stuff, but I think
he could get more money. That's the fact, isn't it? He could get more money.
It's just really hard, isn't it? Like, I think to a certain extent Hughes is in a position where I think Liverpool might just have to bite the bullet and spend more than they want to spend, basically, to keep them or whatever, because of the situation they've got themselves in, purely as a means of buying themselves time to actually replace them further down the line. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to replace Salah, if you're going to replace Van Dijk, you don't want to give yourself just a rushed year to do that while the future's still in the balance. Whereas if you sign them and you agree to a 1 year longer than you want, or a bit more of a wage than you want, but then as a result of that, you get a bit of breathing space to actually, right, how are we going to actually replace these fellas? Who's going to do it? Let's get the deal in the works and all that stuff. Liverpool have put themselves in this spot for a number of different reasons. As John said before, with Edwards and Ward and Schmadker and Klopp and all that. It's a complicated puzzle as to why no one's signed yet. But I think ultimately it is on Liverpool. It's Liverpool's fault. So I think I just want Liverpool to be safe coming out of this with whoever stays, whoever goes, or whatever. I think I want Liverpool to stay at a certain level, and the fear of them all going is real at this point. It's mad.
Just on the interlocking thing, I think Trent's more likely to stay if Virgil and Salah sign. I think that's the kind of thing what he wants to see, and so I think he is more. I think that's he's probably looking at a million things, but I think that sort of is one of them. And on the contracts, I think people worry too much about them in terms of you can always sell a player, and I think people look at what's going on at Old Trafford at the moment. Oh, these lads on big contracts, you know what I mean? Like Virgil van Dijk's not Harry Maguire. Do you know what I mean? He's not getting offers from West Ham if he drops a bit or whatever it is, and going, well, I'm not going there, and I'm sort of going to stay here. It's the same with Mo Salah. People always point to the Henderson one as a bit of a mistake, but they got 12 million quid for him. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So he had one good year, one crap one, and then they sold it for 12 million quid. And so it's like, but people would have rather we didn't give him the contract and he went on a free. And I just sort of can't get my head around that. Like, why that would have been better.
And Henderson went because he wanted to go. He wanted to go and play. He didn't want to be sidelined.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So what are the personalities of play here? Is what
exactly.
you're saying?
It's what are the personalities? What are the status of the footballer? How much are we actually expecting? Virgil van Dijk or Mo Salah's thing. So I'm not. I won't be sort of shitting myself that. The levels might drop to a level where you're just stuck with this fella you sort of don't want. For those two, elite level footballers, like they'll always be in demand. I just can't see that argument at all.
Okay, it has been the Anfield Wrap. Absolutely great show. Thank you very much, Sam Walkerdine, producing audio and images. What a man. Doubling up, doing the business for us. Excellent stuff indeed. John Gibbons, Beth Lindop, and Josh Williams as well. Just very quickly, John, Kip on the Cop.
Oh yeah, so Saturday you can still sponsor us. It's to raise money and awareness for homelessness, and so there's over 100. I think there's over 150 signed up, which is brilliant, including me, including Mo. I know Keo's going to be about as well. So yeah, you can sponsor the Anfield Wrap. We'd appreciate it. If you just go to Just Giving, we'll try and get the bio in the blur, but in case I forget to tell Josh, just if you just search the Anfield Wrap on Just Giving, you can sponsor us / me. I'd appreciate it. Apparently the weather is lively. I had a meeting with Liverpool before, and there's I don't know, flash locusts or something. I don't know. It's all sorts going on. So it's gonna be real out there. So yeah, just a few quid would help me and my help towards it.
It would contribute to the charity.
Well, but also my mental well-being. There we are. Go, well, it's worth it.
There we are. Carol on BBC Breakfast saying, "Locusts Saturday. Watch your backs." It's been the Anfield Wrap.